Good evening, everyone. Let's talk about something that many of us, especially women, have been taught from an early age, being nice. It's a word that carries with it expectations of politeness, compliance, and self-sacrifice. And it's a word that often tells us to make ourselves smaller to make others comfortable. And too often, it's a word that defines how we interact with men, whether in professional, social, or personal relationships. But here's the hard truth: being nice isn't always kind, and it isn't always authentic. Sometimes it's just a mask we wear to avoid conflict, to please others, or to meet societal expectations. And what does that mask cost us? It costs us boundaries, self-respect, and sometimes our very sense of self. Tonight, I want to challenge the notion that being nice is the highest virtue. Instead, I invite you to embrace something deeper, something stronger, and something far more impactful: being authentic. Being authentic means standing firm in your values while being open-hearted. It means communicating with honesty, setting boundaries with courage, and showing up in your relationships with integrity. Let's begin with the foundation of it all: self-respect. Self-respect is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's the internal compass that guides how we allow others to treat us, and perhaps more importantly, how we treat ourselves. Now, self-respect is not about arrogance or putting yourself above others. It's about recognizing your inherent worth, honoring your needs, and setting a standard for your life. It's saying to yourself, I matter. My feelings matter. My boundaries matter. My time, my energy, my dreams, they all matter. But here's the thing: self-respect doesn't magically appear one day. It's a practice. It's built in the small, quiet moments of your life when no one else is watching. It shows up when you choose to say no to something that doesn't align with your values. It shows up when you stop apologizing for taking up space in the world. And it shows up when you advocate for yourself, even when your voice shakes. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you put your needs first without feeling guilty? For many of us, it's not often enough. Society has conditioned us, especially women, to believe that putting ourselves first is selfish. But let me tell you this: it's not selfish, it's essential. Think about the times you've bent over backward to accommodate someone else at the expense of your own peace. Maybe it was staying late at work even though you were exhausted. Maybe it was agreeing to something you didn't want to do because you didn't want to upset someone. Every time you say yes to something that diminishes you, you're saying no to yourself. Self-respect flips that script. It gives you permission to prioritize your well-being. It allows you to advocate for your needs without guilt or hesitation. It's not about being unkind or unyielding. It's about being clear with yourself and others about what you deserve. Here's the truth: people will treat you the way you allow them to. If you consistently put your needs on the back burner, others will follow suit. But when you start valuing yourself, something magical happens. You begin to attract people and opportunities that align with your worth. You set the tone for how others engage with you. So how do you cultivate self-respect? Practice self-awareness, get clear on your values, your limits, and what truly matters to you. The more you understand yourself, the easier it becomes to honor your needs. Set boundaries without apology. Boundaries are not barriers, they're guidelines for healthy relationships. They let others know what's acceptable and what's not. Speak kindly to yourself. Your inner dialogue matters. Replace self-criticism with self-compassion. Talk to yourself the way you would a dear friend. Honor your commitments to yourself. If you say you're going to do something, whether it's taking a day off to recharge or pursuing a goal, follow through. Show yourself that you're dependable. Remember, self-respect is not about being perfect. It's about showing up for yourself day after day, even when it's hard. It's about recognizing that you deserve to live a life that reflects your worth, not because someone else says so, but because you say so. When you respect yourself, the world around you begins to shift. You stop seeking external validation because you've already given yourself the approval you need. And in doing so, you free yourself to live authentically, boldly, and unapologetically. It starts with you. So I ask you tonight, how will you honor your self-respect moving forward? Because when you do, you're not just changing how others see you, you're changing how you see yourself. Boundaries are a concept we often hear about, but rarely take the time to truly understand. And yet, they are one of the most powerful tools we have for building healthy, fulfilling relationships. Let's get something clear up front. Boundaries are not about pushing people away or shutting down connection. On the contrary, boundaries invite deeper connection by ensuring that respect and understanding are at the core of every interaction. But here's the challenge: most of us weren't taught how to set boundaries. Instead, we were taught to please, accommodate, and endure, often at the expense of our own well-being. We've been conditioned to believe that saying no is selfish, that expressing discomfort is rude, and that putting our needs first makes us unkind. That's not true. Boundaries are an act of kindness both to yourself and to others. They help you protect your time, energy, and emotional health while providing clarity about what you need in a relationship. Without boundaries, resentment builds, communication falters, and relationships suffer. So what does it mean to learn the art of boundaries? First, understand that boundaries are personal. What works for someone else might not work for you, and that's okay. Your boundaries are a reflection of your values, priorities, and emotional capacity. They're not rules for others, they're guidelines for yourself. When you set a boundary, you're not trying to control someone else's behavior, you're deciding what you will and won't tolerate in your own life. For example, if you value your personal time, you might set a boundary around work-life balance. If you prioritize emotional safety, you might set a boundary against gossip or criticism in your relationships. These boundaries are not walls to keep others out, they're gates that you control, opening and closing as needed to protect what matters most. Next, recognize that boundaries require communication. A boundary unspoken is a boundary unknown. Expecting others to magically understand your limits without expressing them is unfair to both parties. Communicating a boundary might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're not used to advocating for yourself. But remember, clarity is kindness. When you express a boundary, do so with calmness and confidence. Use I statements to take ownership of your needs, for example. Instead of saying, "You always interrupt me," say, "I need to finish my thoughts before I hear your perspective." Instead of saying, "You're disrespectful of my time," say, "I need us to stick to agreed upon times for meetings or calls." It's also important to anticipate pushback. Not everyone will respond positively to your boundaries, especially if they've benefited from you not having them. That's okay. Boundaries are about protecting your well-being, not earning approval. The right people in your life will respect your boundaries. The wrong ones will reveal themselves when you set them. Remember, enforcing boundaries is not a one-time event, it's an ongoing practice. Sometimes you'll need to remind others of your limits. Other times you'll need to reevaluate and adjust your boundaries as your circumstances change. This is normal. Boundaries are not static, they're as dynamic as you are. But here's the magic of boundaries: when you set and honor them, you teach others how to treat you. You set the tone for respect, accountability, and mutual understanding in your relationships. And most importantly, you demonstrate to yourself that your needs are valid and deserving of care. So how do you begin mastering the art of boundaries? Reflect on your limits, what makes you feel uncomfortable, drained, or overwhelmed. These feelings are often signals of where boundaries are needed. Practice saying no, start small. Decline a minor request that doesn't serve you. Remember, no is a complete sentence. Seek support if setting boundaries feels daunting. Talk to a trusted friend, mentor, or therapist. They can offer guidance and encouragement. Be consistent. A boundary that isn't enforced loses its power. Follow through on what you say, even if it's hard. Ultimately, boundaries are about creating a life that feels aligned and intentional. They're about choosing relationships where you're valued, not used. They're about preserving your energy for the things that truly matter. And here's the beautiful part: the more you practice boundaries, the more natural they become. You stop feeling guilty for honoring your needs because you realize that boundaries are not about shutting people out. They're about letting the right people in on the terms that allow you to thrive. So my question to you is this: what boundary will you set today to protect your peace tomorrow? Because every time you honor your boundaries, you're taking a step toward a more balanced, authentic life. One of the most pervasive habits we often fall into, especially when trying to keep the peace, is passive agreement. You know, I'm talking about nodding along, smiling politely, and saying yes when deep down you feel a strong no. Or maybe you stay silent when something doesn't sit right with you because you don't want to rock the boat. It might seem harmless in the moment, even like the right thing to do. After all, you're avoiding conflict, right? But here's the truth: every time you choose passive agreement over honest expression, you betray a small part of yourself. Now, let me be clear: honest expression doesn't mean being blunt or confrontational. It's not about winning an argument or proving someone wrong. It's about showing up authentically and giving voice to your thoughts, feelings, and values, even when it's uncomfortable. Passive agreement might feel safe, but it comes at a cost. Over time, it creates resentment toward others for not understanding your needs, and more importantly, resentment toward yourself for not standing up for them. It diminishes your voice and erodes your self-confidence because deep down, you know you're not being true to yourself. So how do we replace passive agreement with honest expression? Let's face it, honesty can feel scary. The fear of rejection, judgment, or conflict can make us hold back. But discomfort is not a reason to stay silent, it's an opportunity to grow. Begin by acknowledging that speaking your truth may feel awkward at first, but it's a necessary step toward building genuine relationships and self-respect. When you choose honesty over passivity, you might feel vulnerable, but vulnerability is where courage lives. It's where connection grows. It's where you show others and yourself that your voice matters. You don't have to start with a grand declaration. Practice in everyday moments. For example, if someone asks you to do something and you're unable or unwilling, don't automatically say yes, pause. Then respond truthfully, even if it's as simple as, "I'm sorry, I can't commit to that right now." The more you practice these small acts of honesty, the easier it becomes to express yourself in bigger, more significant situations. One of the most powerful tools for honest expression is the use of I statements. These statements allow you to communicate your feelings and needs without blaming or accusing others. For example, instead of saying, "You never listen to me try, I feel unheard when our conversations are interrupted." Instead of saying, "You're always late try, I feel disrespected when I'm left waiting." I statements keep the focus on your experience, making it easier for others to hear and understand you without becoming defensive. No is one of the most honest words you can use. It's not unkind, selfish, or rude. It's a boundary, a clear and simple way to express what aligns with your capacity and priorities. Saying no doesn't mean rejecting the person, it means honoring your own needs. Practice saying no without over-explaining or apologizing. For example, "No, I can't help with that project this time, but thank you for asking." "No, I'd rather not join that event, but I hope it goes well." Here's the beautiful irony: when you stop agreeing just to avoid conflict, you actually create stronger relationships. Why? Because people trust honesty. They may not always like what you say, but they'll respect you for being genuine. And in the long run, honest communication lays the foundation for relationships that are built on mutual respect and understanding. One of the biggest fears about honest expression is that it will lead to disagreement. But here's the thing: agreement is not the goal, understanding is. You don't need everyone to agree with your perspective, you need them to hear it. When you share your truth, focus on clarity, not persuasion. Speak your mind, but allow others the space to have their own thoughts and feelings. Healthy relationships thrive on this kind of open dialogue. Choosing honest expression over passive agreement is an act of courage. It's a way of showing up in the world as your full, authentic self. It might not always be easy, and it might not always be received the way you hope, but it will always be worth it. Because every time you replace silence with truth, every time you speak up for what you believe in, you strengthen your sense of self-worth. And in doing so, you invite others to meet you in the same spirit of authenticity and respect. There's a subtle but critical difference between empathy and people-pleasing. Empathy is about understanding and respecting the feelings of others, while people-pleasing is often about prioritizing their feelings over your own at all costs. And it's easy to confuse the two because they can look similar on the surface, but the motivations and outcomes couldn't be more different. People-pleasing stems from a desire to avoid conflict, gain approval, or keep the peace, even when it means compromising your own needs, values, or boundaries. It's a reflex rooted in fear of rejection, disapproval, or being seen as difficult. But here's the hard truth: when you people-please, you're not truly showing care for others. You're sacrificing authenticity and depth in your relationships for the illusion of harmony. Empathy, on the other hand, allows you to genuinely connect with others while staying grounded in your own truth. It's about listening deeply, offering support, and holding space for someone's emotions without losing sight of your own. Leading with empathy means recognizing that you can care about someone without having to fix everything for them or sacrifice your own well-being to make them happy. To shift from people-pleasing to empathy, you first need to recognize where the urge to please is coming from. Often it's tied to a belief that your worth is dependent on how much you do for others or how well you meet their expectations. This mindset keeps you trapped in a cycle of overextending yourself, saying yes when you mean no, and putting others' needs ahead of your own. Empathy, however, doesn't require you to abandon yourself. It starts with acknowledging your feelings and needs as equally valid to those of the people you care about. When you lead with empathy, you recognize that true connection doesn't require you to erase yourself. It thrives when you bring your full, authentic self to the table. Learning to lead with empathy means setting boundaries that protect your energy while remaining present and compassionate in your interactions. For example, if someone comes to you with a problem, people-pleasing might lead you to take on their burden as your own, rushing to offer solutions or even neglecting your responsibilities to help them. Empathy, on the other hand, allows you to listen actively, acknowledge their feelings, and offer support without overstepping your limits. Empathy also means understanding that everyone is responsible for their own emotional well-being. It's not your job to ensure that others never feel disappointed, frustrated, or upset. When you stop trying to shield others from their emotions, you give them the space to grow, learn, and take ownership of their experiences. It's also important to remember that leading with empathy involves clear communication. People-pleasing often relies on vague promises or avoiding hard conversations to keep others happy, but this approach rarely works in the long term. Empathy calls for honesty, expressing your thoughts and feelings in a way that honors both yourself and the other person. For example, if you need to decline a request, empathy allows you to say, "I care about you, but I don't have the capacity to take this on right now," rather than agreeing out of guilt or obligation. Leading with empathy means allowing yourself to feel deeply for others without taking on their emotions as your own. It's about being compassionate without becoming overwhelmed, supportive without losing sight of your own needs, and present without overstepping. This shift requires practice and patience, especially if you're used to equating care with self-sacrifice. But when you embrace empathy over people-pleasing, you create space for authentic relationships built on mutual respect, understanding, and growth. Words are powerful. They have the ability to inspire, comfort, and connect. But as much as words can move us, actions are the true measure of integrity, commitment, and authenticity. In a world where it's easy to say the right things, it's the consistency between what we say and what we do that defines our true character. How often have you heard someone say, "I'll change," or "I promise," only to find that their actions don't align with their words? Maybe you've even found yourself in a situation where you've made promises or spoken words of intention only to fall short when it came to following through. It's a universal experience, one that can leave people feeling disillusioned or hurt. While words are important in expressing intention, it is the actions that demonstrate whether those words hold any real weight. Words without action are empty. They can be comforting in the moment, but they do not create lasting change or build trust. On the other hand, when actions speak louder than words, the message becomes undeniable. Actions show that we are serious about our commitments, that we value our promises, and that we understand the responsibility that comes with the things we say. This doesn't mean that words are irrelevant. In fact, clear communication is essential. But it's essential to back up your words with corresponding actions. If you say you care, show it with your time and energy. If you say you're committed to a cause or a relationship, demonstrate it through consistent effort. When there's a gap between what you say and what you do, it undermines trust and credibility. It's important to recognize that people are more likely to believe what you do rather than what you say. For instance, if you claim to value honesty but continually tell small lies, your words will begin to lose meaning. Conversely, if you demonstrate integrity through your actions, people will trust that your words reflect your true character, regardless of whether you say much at all. This is especially important in relationships, both personal and professional. In a relationship, promises of love or support are meaningful, but it's the ongoing actions that prove they're real. It's the consistent effort to listen, show up, and be present that communicates commitment. It's the willingness to make sacrifices when necessary and to support one another through actions that truly builds a lasting bond. Similarly, in the workplace, leadership is not just about giving motivational speeches, it's about leading through example. It's about showing up on time, doing the work, and upholding the values you promote. When actions reflect the vision you communicate, it inspires others to follow suit. To value actions over words means that you must make a conscious decision to align your actions with your intentions. It's easy to make promises or say things we think people want to hear, but true accountability comes when we stand by our words with measurable, consistent actions. This requires self-awareness, discipline, and the courage to follow through, even when it's difficult. It also requires letting go of the fear of perfection. Nobody is perfect and mistakes will happen. But integrity isn't about never slipping up, it's about being willing to make things right when you do. When you value actions over words, you become committed not just to the image you project, but to the truth of who you are and how you show up in the world. In embracing self-respect, setting boundaries, and leading with empathy, we learn to value actions over words. By expressing our truth honestly, we break free from the cycle of people-pleasing and foster relationships rooted in authenticity. When we act in alignment with our values, we build trust, respect, and deeper connections. This journey requires courage, but the rewards are immense: a life led by integrity, compassion, and unwavering self-worth.